Hi guys, my name's Barry and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review for Twilight Zone, the movie. Now, I didn't realise that I hadn't seen this movie fully as an adult before, and I don't remember anything about it if I had seen it as a kid. I thought I remembered seeing it as a kid, but a few years ago, I was listening to the Slaughtered Lamb movie podcast, and they'd done a segment on Twilight Zone, the movie, and they mentioned a real life incident that happened during the filming of it involving the actor Vic Morrow. And when I was listening to it, I was like, this can't be real with what happened to Vic Morrow, which I'll go into. And then I looked into it and I thought, oh my goodness, I'll need to watch the movie to see how the final product ended up, because surely the segment with Victor Morrow would have been taken out, but it wasn't. And I thought, oh wow. And I just left it for a few years because I was so taken aback by what actually happened in real life that I thought, I can't watch that. But curiosity got the best of me, so I decided to finally watch the movie. We'll start with the prologue that's directed by John Landis, and it stars Albert Brooks and Dan Aykroyd. It's just a little 3 or 4 minute segment, and I really enjoyed this segment. It's about a guy who's picked up a hitchhiker and they're driving along the road and they're just talking rubbish and they're talking about scary stuff, and Dan Aykroyd says, do you want to see something really scary? And then he frightens Albert Brooks with his scary face. And even though it was very short, to me, that's the one thing I remember about this Twilight Zone, and maybe I've only seen that one segment growing up, and maybe I didn't watch the rest of it, but I always remember that segment, and it always scared the life out of me. Segment 1 is called Time Out. This is the one that's directed by John Landis, and it stars Vic Morrow. This one's about a racist who is talking about East Asians, he's talking about Jews, and he's talking about blacks. He really hates everybody apart from white people, and the segment takes him back in time as these people. He's seen as an East Asian in some of the segment, he's seen as a black, and he's seen as a Jew, and it goes around like the Nazi camps and Vietnam War and stuff, and he's one of those people, and he's trying to say, I'm not one of these people, I'm not one of these people. So it's teaching him a lesson that this is how we live, so maybe not get on our back. So it's quite a deep message with the story, and I think it's one of the deepest ones in the segment. However, and we will get into this might get a little bit dark, guys, if you're watching, but the real life incident is a lot worse than the segment itself. Vic Morrow, along with a 6 and a 7-year-old child, were killed on set. Vic Morrow is the father of Jennifer Jason Leigh, and he was decapitated in real life, and I couldn't believe what happened. I watched the documentary about it after hearing about it, and I just couldn't believe it. John Landis went to court on it. He never got any jail time. Steven Spielberg is a producer, and I heard that when the incident happened and people rushed towards the incident, Steven Spielberg just ran away, and he should have been jailed, but he wasn't. He pretended he wasn't there, apparently. But there was a scene where Vic Morrow was saving these 2 children in Vietnam, and as he's trying to get away, there's a helicopter above. The real life story is the pyrotechnics caused the wires on the helicopter to melt, which caused the helicopter to come down as the propellers are moving, and that you actually see it in the documentary where the propellers just hit Vic Morrow and the kids, decapitates 2 of them, decapitates Vic Morrow, one of the kids, and the other kid wasn't decapitated, but they were crushed to death, and the 3 of them died instantly. Such a tragic, tragic time, and I had no idea about this until a couple of years ago, and just watching the documentary about it, I just couldn't believe my eyes of what I was seeing, what I was witnessing, what I was hearing. John Landis continued to have a successful career after this. I can't believe that, because he was the one that was saying, we want to get this done, we want this done. He even said that when it was filmed at night, and they wanted to get 2 child actors in, but the law said, no, we can't let you have kids in at that time of night. So he gave backhanded money to parents on the streets for their children. They were there illegally at night and in front of pyrotechnics and explosions. So many things should not have happened on that set that happened. And it was all thanks to John Landis. So he should have spent time in jail. However, the buck stops with the producer, Steven Spielberg, who didn't even go to court over it. And apparently he was the one that was saying, we need this done, we need this done, which then put pressure on John Landis, who then put pressure on other people. So if anything, John Landis and Steven Spielberg should have been in jail, and they should not have had careers after Twilight Zone, but they did, and that's unfortunate. Segment 2 was called Kick the Can, and it was directed by Steven Spielberg. Now, this one, I read that it wasn't supposed to be in the movie, but this segment was written specifically to make it more fluffy, because not only was the first segment really deep with the Nazis and stuff and racism, but because of the incident, they had to do something quick so that they could still bring out the film. So Steven Spielberg decided, let's do something lighthearted, and they got Kick the Can. And it's about this guy, played by Scatman Crothers, who goes around old folks' homes as an old man who probably isn't an old man, and they play games like Kick the Can, and he makes the residents, all the old residents, feel young again. And it feels like an episode, or it feels like another movie like Cocoon or something like that. It's very Amblin-like, it's very Steven Spielberg, but to me it felt too fluffy and out of place, and naturally it would feel out of place if it was a last minute rewrite to bring in that segment. So it just didn't feel like it should have been there. It was okay, and it was okay for a Steven Spielberg segment, but to me it just didn't feel like it should have fit in there. Segment 3 is called It's a Good Life, and it's directed by Joe Dante, and this one did really feel like a Joe Dante segment. When you watch the segments in this film, you do get that flavour of the directors that are making them, like the Steven Spielberg one and the John Landis one. But the Joe Dante one felt very, very Joe Dante. It felt like The Burbs, the way it was shot, the way it looked. And it's about this little kid who was accidentally run over on his bike by Kathleen Quinlan, who's the woman in it. And it obviously has Dick Miller in it as well, because it's a Joe Dante segment. But Kathleen Quinlan's character takes a little boy home just to make sure he's safe, and he gets back to his parents, and the parents look a little bit strange. It felt like an episode, or like it felt like Beetlejuice as well. They were all acting very strange. The grandfather was played by Kevin McCarthy, and we find out that the little kid has the power to put anyone that he wants into a cartoon TV show. So naturally, the parents are very scared just in case they get put into this TV show as well. And it's all about that, and Kathleen Quinlan trying to get away from the little kid just in case she gets put into the show as well. It got a little goofy near the end of the segment when you see the cartoon characters coming to life into the real world. It felt weird, but it was actually an okay one. It's one that I felt more intrigued by the end of the segment. Segment 4 is called Nightmare at 20,000 Feet, and it's directed by George Miller and stars John Lithgow. This is the one I was most intrigued by when I was reading about it, because I had never seen anything directed by George Miller apart from Mad Max. So it's interesting to see him direct something different to Mad Max, and I would say that this one was probably the best directed one out of them all. It's about a guy, John Lithgow's character, who is seen as a little bit nuts. He feels like the plane is getting taken down by a creature on the wing, and that's something I've heard of before. It must be like an urban legend, and the passengers and the crew are trying to calm him down because he's seen this thing on the wing, but they feel like it's just turbulence. So throughout this segment, we're trying to figure out, is it actually turbulence, or is it actually happening? As this creature definitely on the wing of the plane? So I think this was the most intriguing one out of them all, and it didn't feel like a George Miller directed segment, because George Miller to me is Mad Max. So this is the one that felt like it could have went any way, and I really enjoyed this one. I'd say the best episode is Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. I would say the best story is Time Out. I'd say the best looking one is It's a Good Life. And I would say the worst one was Kick the Can. So I think they all brought something apart from the Kick the Can episode by Steven Spielberg. But I do genuinely believe at that time Steven Spielberg's head wasn't there, because he was probably thinking, I'm going to get taken to jail here. So when they were doing this one, he probably had eyes in the back of his head at the same time thinking, are they coming for me? Because they maybe should have. Overall though, guys, I don't think it was a great anthology movie, especially for something like Twilight Zone, and especially for the type of directors that we got in this one. I felt like it was just more dull than anything. It was okay. It was an okay watch, and I feel like I will watch it again in the future because it was still watchable. I just feel like it was underwhelming because of the directors involved in it. And obviously, it was very tragic in real life as well. It's something that I'll never forget. Watching that documentary, watching segments about it, it will haunt me forever. So I think the lasting impression I have for this isn't the movie, it's the true life incident that happened during the filming of the movie. So what are your thoughts on Twilight Zone, the movie, guys? What are your thoughts on the real life incident? Do you think John Landis and Steven Spielberg should have had careers after it, or do you genuinely feel it was just an accident? Leave your comments about the movie and the incident down below, guys. Let me know what you think, and I'll talk to you soon.
Meeting adjourned.
I'll be right back.
What are you waiting for, huh?
Coming to get you, Barbara.
Ever played in the cat?
Someone's in the back! See?